Hello, class. This is Mr. Cooter. Thank you for taking the time and initiative to watch this video and fill in the notes. It's definitely going to help you out, make you a lot more prepared for tomorrow's lesson. Please make sure you have the paper copy of the rational numbers notes, or if you want, you can download this as a PDF on my Schoology and just convert it to Cabinet and fill along with me as I am working, okay? Let's start off by making sure we fill in our names here, so that way I as a teacher know whose is whose. We're going to start off with our vocabulary. Please make sure you're filling this in as we go. There's just a lot of vocab with this section. If we do a good job with this, we'll be really prepared for our practice tomorrow. Our natural numbers is our first classification of rational numbers. Our natural numbers are our counting numbers. So I'm going to type in here counting numbers. Natural numbers are basically what my 3-year-old is learning right now in preschool. Counting numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. Okay, it could be any number. I'm going to leave some examples here. 3, 8, 462. It does not include any negative numbers. It does not include 0. I'm going to take my examples here and fill them in. 1, 3, 8, 462. Our whole numbers, that is our next classification of rational numbers. Our whole numbers are just counting numbers and 0. Give you a moment to type that in, fill that in on your sheet. So our counting numbers and 0. I'm going to give some examples here. We have 0, 3, 15. I'm going to go ahead and fill that in my chart here. 0, 3, 15. All right. Integers. Integers are like that giant number line in front of my classroom that you've all seen. I keep referring back to it. It is all the counting numbers, the whole numbers, and negatives. So I'm going to write counting, whole, and negative. So some examples of this. We have negative 43. We have 18, and we have 47. I'm going to fill that in on my chart up here. So negative 43, 18, 47. And then finally, our last classification of a rational number is just rational number is itself. And that is any number that can be made into a fraction. Right, any number that could be made into a fraction. We'll do some more examples of that as we go. I'm not going to give you any examples right now at this moment, but I will. Please just make sure you have the definition down there. Just some more notes here. Fractions and decimals are forms of rational numbers. And all rational numbers can be written as fractions. We have two final definitions here. We have a terminating decimal and a repeating decimal. So terminating decimal, I don't know if you are old enough to have ever watched The Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he puts an end to things. That always helps me remember what a terminating decimal is. So let's say we have 0.47. That decimal does not keep going. We have 0.3. Those are just some examples that I'm going to include in my rational numbers chart. I have 0.47 and 0.3. And finally, repeating decimals. We see this a lot when we convert our fractions into decimals. Like if you convert 1/3 into a decimal, you get 0.333333, and then our calculator kind of stops there, but really it goes on forever and ever. It repeats. So I'm going to write that as 0.3, and I'm going to put a repetant bar. If we do 2/3 as a fraction, we convert that over to a decimal, we get 0.6 repeating. So those are examples of rational numbers as well. I'm going to put that at the bottom of my chart there, just to distinguish the difference between terminating and repeating. So that way I have that in my notes. All right, give you just a few more moments, copy those down, and then I will flip to the second page of our notes. All right. The second page of our notes is just a check for understanding. So in the table below, we have to mark an X for each category that applies. The first number is -6. -6 is not a natural number because it is negative. Remember, natural numbers are counting numbers. -6 is also not a whole number because it is negative. But it is an integer. Okay? It is one of our counting numbers, but negative. It also is rational. We can write that as a fraction, -6/1. All right, moving on to 0. 0 is not a natural number. It is not one of our counting numbers. It is a whole number, though. Since it is a whole number, it is also an integer. And we know that it is rational because we can write it as a fraction. 0/1, 0/5, 0/1,000,000. So I'm going to put an X there. 1/2. Well, 1/2 is one of those tricky ones because it is a fraction. It would not be natural, whole, or an integer. However, we know that it can be written as a fraction because it already is a fraction. So I'm going to mark an X for rational. 4 76/100. I can also, if it helps you, when you have these with decimals, you can rewrite it as a fraction. I'm going to do the same here. I'm not even going to reduce it. I'm just going to know, hey, I can write this as a fraction. 4 76/100. So that is a fraction. It is not natural, whole, or an integer. However, I just showed to you that I can write it as a fraction, so it is going to be rational. 23. 23 is a great number because all these categories are going to be represented. It is natural. It's one of our counting numbers. We can count to 23. It's a whole number. It's an integer. And I can also write 23/1. That is a fraction. It's rational. And then we get to one of our last ones. We have 264.5%. I just naturally rewrote that as a fraction as I spoke out loud. So 264.5%. Again, that helps me realize, hey, that's rational. But that will not be natural, whole, or integer. All right, so tomorrow in class, we're going to start off with more checks for understandings. Please make sure that we have both of these pages of notes. If you miss something, you could always rewind and just make sure you fill that in. All right, these notes will be very, very helpful for tomorrow's lesson. See you tomorrow, everybody.